Hi, I'm soft speaker Lynn, fairy godmother. I'm here with a short chapter for the parents. I've already read the Star Money, and that can be found on my channel. The Star Money as Quintessential Fairy Tale. The Star Money is a very short fairy tale found in the Brothers Grimm collection from Germany, but it surprisingly elicited a deep exploration for this series. Unlike other kinds of folk tales, this story fits the pattern of a quintessential fairy tale. In Volume 3, we discuss the differences between folk tale, fairy tale, legend, myth, and history. Fairy tales do fall into the category of folklore, but they are a specific subgenre. Ironically, fairies are more often found in regular folk tales than fairy tales. But fairy tales will usually involve magic and the supernatural. Fairy tales usually depict a protagonist faced with some life crisis that they need to overcome. Very often they embark on a journey to seek their fortune and or destiny, although sometimes they face a challenge in some other way, such as being instructed to spin gold from straw. A typical fairy tale ends happily with the message that we can all overcome challenges and obstacles in our lives if we live as good people, are industrious, are kind to others, and so forth. Another common theme is that if we are behaving well, then the supernatural aid will come to assist us. Of course, there is a wide variation. Not all fairy tales fit the mold, and some tales are difficult to differentiate between whether fairy tale or generic folk tale. A folk tale will usually end abruptly. Folk tale endings are often neither happy nor sad, just matter of fact, although a folk tale is more likely to end sadly than a fairy tale is. A folk tale might tell a story about a human's interaction with a fairy maiden, a mermaid, or a selkie, for instance. However, there is usually no setup to lay out a personal crisis before the meeting. Whereas a fairy tale protagonist may be an orphan or a young person dealing with cruel or desperately poor parents and grappling for a better life, and thus meets a supernatural helper in their quest. The general folklore protagonist often meets a supernatural figure completely at random. Where the fairy tale supernatural figure is often a guide who offers assistance, the general folktale supernatural figure may be helpful, malicious, or indifferent. Here's an illustration by Helen Jacobs. In this series thus far, we have explored the three heads of the well. Let's see, I think I have these right. Well, I have some of the books here. I've got Peer Gynt, which I would still classify as a fairy tale, but it deviates from the pattern in that the protagonist, Peer Gynt, overcame his obstacles on his own without the aid of a supernatural helper. In fact, the trolls he was battling are more akin to a general folkloric creature. However, he does embark on a journey. He meets obstacles, he overcomes them to meet a happy ending. This tale, this tale more than not fits the pattern of a fairy tale, but it does deviate from the quintessential pattern. In Volume 3, we discuss the tale of Thomas the Rhymer, a book which I have yet to read to you. And it was explained that the tale is difficult to categorize because there is historical basis for the person of Thomas. His story drifted into local legend, and then it carried on in the folk tradition. The tale was further altered as it moved from poetic form to ballad. And then Sir Walter Scott added additional verses to the ballad before it was reinterpreted in narrative form. Thomas the Rhymer somewhat fits the structure of a fairy tale, as Thomas does, go on a journey, and he is given blessings by a supernatural figure. However, he did not embark on his journey of his own volition, and he was facing no obstacle at the outset of the tale. Rather, Thomas was minding his own business, happy as can be, and was already the laird of his own castle, rather than a poor peasant who becomes a king or queen at the end. The supernatural figure appeared not to help Thomas along his journey, but rather kidnapped him against his will and hijacked him upon a journey. He was given blessings and gifts, but ultimately those gifts came with strings attached, as he was required to return to the fairy realm when summoned. So this was a great example of how a tale can cross genres, and also how tales develop and alter over time. Some tales are truly rooted in history, in an oral society, one which records their history in the form of sagas and ballads, which are then memorized and recited rather than writing them down. An historical event will eventually pass into legend and then into myth. Many folk tales, such as described above, where a protagonist has an interaction with a supernatural entity, are based on first-hand accounts that people claim to experience. This is not unlike modern ghost stories, urban legends, and accounts of alien abduction. A particularly interesting experience would make its way verbally through the village and beyond, exactly the same way that modern urban legends still do. Over time, a tale can be influenced by other tales, be altered by the storyteller, and go through alterations, resulting in variations. This means that we find similarities among different folk and fairy tales, and why the same fairy tale can have sharp differences in different regions. The Star Money is a quintessential fairy tale that fits squarely into the niche of the fairy tale genre. Like the Three Heads of the Well, the Star Money features a young girl who is faced with a dilemma and embarks upon a journey to seek a change in fortune. The protagonist in this tale also meets beggars, and like the previous heroine, she chooses to share her own meager possessions with them. The girl in The Star Money is blessed for her generosity, just like the girl in Three Heads, and likewise finds a happy ending. Although this tale is much shorter, it still follows prescribed fairy tale patterns perfectly. So I'll be reading the next chapter soon as I get a chance. Europe's cultural roots in ancient Indo-European culture. Maps and more pictures to come. So stay tuned. Please comment. Please keep your comments appropriate, just in case young adults are reading them, or if a parent decides to let an older child read this or listen to this. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good week.